So what do we do about monopoly? The text notes several important antitrust regulations and antitrust laws to protect against the formation of monopolies. Many of these are aimed at measuring the size of industries and the concentration of industries and the number of firms doing business. But you know, some of the key pieces of legislation that set up our antitrust laws include the Sherman Antitrust Act, which dates back to the 1890s, the Clayton Antitrust Act, which dates to 1914, and the Robinson-Patman Act, which dates to the Great Depression. Oftentimes, the government will try and evaluate the economic efficiency of mergers. Microsoft has been in battles with this. I remember some time ago, Blockbuster and Hollywood Video were involved in a discussion to merge, and the government was trying to decide whether getting rid of a bunch of costly brick-and-mortar stores as the industry consolidated would help consumers by reducing the cost of renting videos, or whether the new monopoly power that would exist if Hollywood Video and Blockbuster became one huge mega video rental store. The Justice Department was trying to weigh the differences between whether the lower costs to producers versus the monopoly power of those producers would reduce the prices actually paid by consumers who wanted to rent videos. So we note that large firms may create inefficiencies due to monopoly pricing. Sirius and XM now have monopoly power that they didn't have when they were competitors. But large firms, we note, may be more cost effective. So the government and the courts and the Justice Department try to weigh the costs and benefits of industry consolidation in evaluating mergers. So given that monopoly power does create inefficiencies, and sometimes the government chooses to act, how do they do so? Well, there's a number of ways that the government can act to try and smooth out some of the problems associated with the inefficiencies of monopoly. The first one is regulation. Government can try to determine the best price, right? You can set prices, and ideally what we would like to do is get to the point where price, remember, which represents the marginal value of the last consumer, equals marginal cost. The marginal cost of producing one more unit. If the marginal value equals the marginal cost, there's no more deadweight loss problem. But this is difficult. Estimating marginal cost is very difficult. More common is to try to figure out average cost and make sure that firms set price equal to average cost, plus generally some appropriate rate of return that drives the monopolist's profits down to the zero profit level that we get in perfect competition. And functionally, this accomplishes much of the same thing and should theoretically get firms to improve their level of efficiency. In other words, governments decide to set prices, and that's what helps us get a more efficient outcome. Alternatively, the government could own firms, and this is relatively uncommon in the United States, but it's common in other places in the world to deal with monopolies. But governments own water departments, generally run water departments as an example of monopoly. The post office, for instance, is created as a government institution. It's run independently of the government, but with a good deal of government support and an awful lot of government intervention. And then finally, we note that sometimes governments do things to create monopoly. Right? Patents, licenses, and copyrights are government policy that creates monopoly rights. They create monopoly rights generally to incentivize creation or to facilitate regulation. In the case of casinos, they want to facilitate regulation. In the case of, say, medical drugs that receive patents, what they want to do in that case is ensure that the medical companies, that the drug companies have an incentive to manufacture drugs, to invest millions and millions of dollars in science, research, and development in order to create new medical treatments. And the incentive that a patent gives them, they say, well, we'll invest our resources in the creation of this in order to, for some period of time, reap the monopoly profits. Right? So there's this trade-off between the incentives to create new drugs and the benefits associated with collecting profits. The obvious source of market failure in the absence of patents is, well, if I'm a drug company and I invent something and it's easy for other people to just copy it right away, then I have no incentive to make the investments in research and development in the first place.